This show is dedicated to helping you strengthen your family tree and live financially free. Welcome to the Marriage, Kids, and Money podcast, everybody. This is Andy Hill, and today we're talking about investing in buy and hold real estate with cash. Some people choose to take out loans to buy their rental properties, and others choose to pay cash. Today we're going to explore why you might want to consider buying in cash and how to do it. I've invited someone on the show who owns 20 rental properties free and clear. No mortgage, no debt, and he doesn't owe a dime to anyone. Rich Carey is my guest today. He's married with 2 children and currently serves in the military. He has a passion for real estate investing and teaching others how to pursue financial independence. His story of investing success has been featured in Bigger Pockets, MarketWatch, and Business Insider. Welcome to the show, Rich.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, Andy.
Awesome. So, Rich, let's start from the beginning. How did you get started with real estate?
Well, let's see. I guess it's a long story, but I got started. I was in the military, and my first I was married when I came into the military in 2000. Always had a passion for real estate. Wanted to buy something, but unfortunately, my first assignment was overseas. It was in Guam, and I don't know if that many people know where Guam is. It's actually a U.S. territory, but it's out in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific. And lots of hurricanes, or I guess they're called typhoons out there, and lots of earthquakes. I didn't want to buy real estate oceanfront in a place that has, earthquakes and typhoons all the time. I actually had my apartment wiped out by a typhoon while I was there, so that was probably prophetic. So it wasn't until I moved back to the States in 2003 that I was able to finally buy a property, and that was in Alexandria, Virginia. And I bought a townhouse with a mortgage. It was actually 10% down, and then 10% was financed. Like the rest of the down payment was financed, which they did back then, at 7%. And then the mortgage was at 5.5, which I thought was extremely low at the time, the interest rate. But I bought it for $280,000, thinking that it was way too expensive and probably going to be the worst mistake of my life. Of course, that ended up not being true.
So you bought that house as a place to live, not necessarily somewhere to rent out. Is that right?
That's true, but of course, when you're in the military, it's a place to live, but you're going to live there for maybe 3 years. More than likely, in my career, it's more likely that I stayed somewhere 1 or 2 years.
Okay, so you stayed how long? So you stayed in D.C. for what, 3 years, and then you moved out of abroad again at that point?
Yeah, so I stayed in D.C. for 2 years, and then actually I moved to Monterey, California to attend. I was still in the military, but I attended graduate school and language school, and then I moved, and then I was there for 3 years, and then I moved to Japan for 5 years.
Wow. Okay, so at that point, you rented the place in D.C. Once you left, and I'm assuming your wife and children are traveling with you as you're doing all of this. Is that right?
Yeah, we've been lucky enough where everywhere that I've been, they've always been able to come with me. But yeah, they were with me the whole time, and there were some other things I was trying to do as well. So on the first house I bought for $280,000, and I thought I paid too much, but about a year later, it was worth $400,000, and shortly after that, it was worth $450,000. And I kind of thought to myself, like, I must be a genius at this. And by the way, it's not true, but a beginner's mistake. Sometimes it's dangerous to have too much success right off the bat. I just got to keep doing this. Like, I'll just keep buying houses, and they'll keep, if I can just every year get $150,000 in equity, I'll be a millionaire in no time. That didn't necessarily work with the bubble in the market that was about to happen, because this was in 2003. By 2005, I'm feeling very confident in my abilities. And so I tried doing some other things. Like, I wanted to buy more real estate. I almost bought in Monterey, California, which would have been a huge mistake. And I even did something called I flipped new construction, hoping to make a big killing, and ended up not really making any money at all.
No. Okay, so you got into flipping and it kind of hit into the bad time of the market, and it's something that you decided was not the best investment. So what happened at that point where you decided, hey, I'm going to stop flipping and maybe get into purchasing other forms of real estate?
So I guess, so at this point, I'm renting the house out in D.C., and I've tried a couple different things. I tried flipping a house, and when the bubble hit, I didn't know it was the bubble at the time, but I I realized that I didn't make as much money as people were making in the past. And I thought like, well, I guess I just picked the wrong neighborhood. But it turns out the bubble was bursting. And I kind of just, I was overseas and in Japan by this time. And I was the kind of person who I think in this community, I didn't know this community yet, but this, fire community, this FI community, I was a big saver. I was frugal. I should say it was more my wife probably. And, we were investing conservatively. We were putting lots of money away. Another thing I did that was kind of interesting from Japan was I started flipping houses with a partner. So my partner was actually in Alexandria, Virginia. He lived right across the street from where my townhouse was, which was still a rental for me. And we flipped houses together. I was putting up the money, and by money I mean I was taking out mortgages, and he was doing the legwork. And I did that. I flipped houses about 8 times from Japan, and that of course also fueled my ability to put money aside that I was able to use later to purchase houses.
Got it. So you were able to get some cash from flipping, and this whole managing from abroad thing kind of blows my mind. So,
right.
So
right.
How did you manage that process? You're in Japan. You've got a friend, a partner in DC, but I guess how do you feel confident enough to make those big investments like that when you're not physically there?
Well, first of all, flipping houses with a partner when you're not even present, I'm not going to recommend that to anybody. And I made money, and there was a lot of trust. I mean, that's something that I'm going to talk about a lot probably today is the person that I flipped houses with, we had a lot of trust. I just knew from my personal relationship with him and watching him deal with other people and his reputation in the neighborhood and in the community that this is a trustworthy guy. Mm-hmm. So I knew that because he could have easily ripped me off by doctoring different documents and, making up work that didn't happen and all kinds of things. But I did it. I flipped houses with him, and it was a way that I made some money. As far as managing that one rental, and I think we're going to talk way more about managing rentals from afar later because I haven't gotten to my 20 yet. But managing that one rental as a military member living overseas, it just wasn't that hard. I had the neighbor that lived across the street who was my, real estate agent / investor / partner / friend. And I knew the AC guy, I knew the plumber. Like I just kind of had a handful of people that I just knew I needed to call when when something went wrong. And the people that I rented to were always in the military. And really the whole time that I owned that house, and I owned it from 03 to 16, it just really wasn't that hard to manage it myself. I mean, you can manage one property yourself in certain situations. And again, you have to also understand that I bought a property that I guess would be considered upper middle class neighborhood. You have less problems with tenants. Certainly some people invest in neighborhoods. If you're buying a house for $40,000 and then renting it out for $800 a month, you're dealing with a different problem set. And that may require heavier management skills that would be hard to do from Japan.
So this one that you had for 13 years, it sounds like, less maintenance, upper middle class neighborhood was a little bit easier. So let's talk about when you made that decision from, hey, flipping properties is a good deal to, hey, I want to do buy and hold rental. When did you decide that switch? When did that happen?
Well, never really had a by this point, I hadn't found any of these podcasts. I hadn't found Bigger Pockets, or I hadn't found this community. I hadn't found the right books yet. I was just trying things and seeing if they worked. And so at one point in my career, I kind of always felt like, I have this rental property, but I don't feel like I'm making that much money. And it seems like I should be making more money, and it just doesn't really seem like I'm getting ahead. Like I think I'm just paying the mortgage and not really doing anything else. So I moved to Montgomery, Alabama for an assignment in 2013. And at that point, I ran into another military member on the first day of, I guess, our new training there. And he introduced himself to the whole class. And he's just like, hey, my name's so-and-so. And I'm, and unlike me, I had just moved to Montgomery. He'd already been there for 2 years. my name's so-and-so. I've been here for 2 years already. These are my hobbies. This is what I like to do. And he's like, by the way, I own a bunch of properties here in Montgomery and I'm making a ton of money and I'm going to be able to retire early. And everybody's just kind of like, okay, whatever. And I was like, what did that guy say? And I was just like, what did that guy just say? Because I'm thinking like, what? And on the break, I made a beeline for him, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, tell me about this. How much do these houses cost? How does property management work? Like, do you have a real estate agent? I mean, have you figured this all out? Where's your contractors? How you getting the money for it? And he explained everything to me. And I realized quickly that he was making a lot more money, a lot more return on investment than I was in DC. A lot more money. And I was like, okay, can you show me how to do this? Because I want to do the same thing you're doing. And essentially, that's what I did. I went from having no properties and having very little experience with real estate to I bought 6 properties in the 10 months that I was there. And because of the financial situation that I was in, saving, investing, flipping houses, being frugal, I was able to pay cash for those houses. Now, those houses costed me between $25,000 and $45,000 each. Now, you got to consider when I was flipping houses in DC, I was spending more than double that just on the down payment for the flips that I was doing. So to me, this was like, wow, these houses are so cheap. So I imagine people wonder, well, why you decide to pay cash for these houses? At this price point, to me, it almost seems silly to try to get a mortgage for $30,000 or $40,000. And actually, out of these 6 houses I bought, I actually did get a mortgage on one of them. Even though I had the money, I'm like, well, I'm going to see if I can get a mortgage on it. It was actually very hard. I had to go to about 6 different banks, and there were the fees were just as high as if the house would have costed $500,000. Like there were still tons of fees involved. And after I got the loan, a couple months later, I'm like, this is stupid, and I just paid the loan off, right? And so that's kind of how we get into my story of Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah, well, talk to me about this house, because you're talking $25,000 to $40,000 homes.
Yeah.
Are these falling apart? What do these look like? I just want to give the reality for people who are listening.
Yeah, it's important to understand. For one thing, I talked about earlier how it's kind of so easy, right? So easy to manage my property in DC. There's a trade-off there. Yeah, it's easy to manage. Yeah, I don't have problems with tenants and things aren't breaking, but I'm really not making any money. If you go to DC right now and you buy a townhouse and then you move away in 2 years and you rent it out, you're going to lose money. You're not just going to have trouble covering your rent. You're going to lose money. Well, I happened to buy at the right time. I got lucky with appreciation. I was making a little money, but not very much. It's just the way that real estate works. Now, in Montgomery, Alabama, I am buying, I'd say, blue-collar, working-class neighborhood. Now, I will be clear that you can buy in a lot worse neighborhoods in Montgomery, Alabama, where you're dealing with Section 8, which is like, government-subsidized housing. You're dealing with high crime. You're dealing with lots of serious problems like break-ins all the time. And I wasn't in those neighborhoods. Those are the houses that cost $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 said and done. The house that I bought first, I believe, was $25,000, but it was really run down, and I put $15,000 into it. And it's the cheapest house I ever bought here. But I'd say that I'm in kind of this. The schools aren't great in the neighborhoods that I buy in, but the houses are, always like freshly painted, always like everything's, and the house is totally fixed. The yards look nice. The neighborhoods aren't scary, but by no means is this like a gated community, with pools and schools that are, 10-10s that everyone wants to send their kids to. And I'll also caveat that by saying, when I moved to Montgomery, Alabama, I think a lot of people assume that I have 20 properties and I'm renting the military. I'm not. The house that I want to live in as a military member that is, I guess, new enough and in a nice neighborhood and in a good school district, if you buy those houses and then rent them out, they don't make any money as rental properties because the neighborhoods are too nice, to be quite honest. So I rent where I live right now, and I buy a few miles away in a lot more of a working class neighborhood.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So you started with the six, and I guess how do you manage six right away? I mean, that kind of sounds overwhelming to me. We're like, okay, I
Yeah,
bought this one, but you seem to all buy them at once. How did you manage fixing them up while having a job, while being married with two kids? Like, talk to me about that a little bit.
right. So I think the way to start talking about that is I bought these houses with the future in mind. And what I meant by that is I knew I was going to move. I didn't know if I was going overseas or maybe just to DC or a few states over, but I knew I was going to move in a few months. I was only there for 10 months. It was just for a school year. So right away, I gave the first house to a management company because I wanted to start working with that management company and working out the kinks in our relationship and making sure that everything was kind of set and ready to go for when I moved away. So every time I was buying a property, I was working closely with a local property manager that was introduced to me by the person that I met on that first day. It was the one that he was using too. And they were key in many, many things for me. They were key in helping me buy in the right neighborhood, making sure that these are floor plans and parts of the neighborhood that people like to rent, make sure that I was buying the right kind of house. Like don't buy 3-bedroom, 1-bath, buy 3-bedroom, 2-bath, because those are way better, easier to rent out, or 4-bedroom, 2-bath. They were deeply involved in everything that I did. And also at the beginning, I bought houses that needed lots of work, and I was supervising all of the work, even though I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But they were recommending contractors to me, and they were introducing me to the right people, and they were sort of giving me this real estate education. So that's kind of how that all worked. And then I was in a school, and when I first got to this military school, I had this idea that I was going to be like one of the top students and graduate with honors and, go on to be a general someday. But once I took on this like massive construction, or not construction, but like real estate sort of these real estate projects, I sort of pulled away from that quickly. And to be quite honest, I did the bare minimum in school, in the military school, and spent all of my spare time on real estate.
I see. So at that point, you have these six, and then you get another assignment to go where at that point?
It was Stuttgart, Germany.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I wasn't expecting that, but that's really cool. I get to go overseas and be in Europe. And I'd spent a lot of my career in Asia, so Europe was something very, very new for me. But yeah, I went to Stuttgart, Germany, and what was very important for me was that I wanted to keep buying houses. But the hard part is you can't really make money if you buy houses that are move-in ready because they're expensive. So I needed to buy houses that needed a lot of work and then get the work done and then give them to my management company. And I needed to do that without being there. So that's really hard. So what did I do? I actually made a deal with my management company that they were going to be the ones that managed my rehabs when I bought a new property. And I told them, I said, they saw how fast I bought six and they were impressed and they liked working with me. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to buy a lot more, but I need your help if I'm going to do this. I'm going to need you to manage these big rehabs when I buy these, and then I'll hand them over to you, and then they'll be, a source of income for you and me. And they were reluctant at first, but they said, well, let's try it once. And it worked out well for all of us. And I ended up going from 6 properties to 20 properties while living in Germany.
Wow.
While living in Germany, and then after that in Korea.
Wow. Okay, so we were talking about, I think a couple minutes ago, about trust. How did you find this company? What was the process you went about to find this company that you trusted so much to go about this? Did you meet with a bunch of different companies? Was it just luck? How did that all work out?
I probably, it's funny that you asked the question that way because I don't think anyone's ever asked that before. But and this is important, and I'm sure I could have done this better. And I even think I've written about this on my blog in a way where you probably should spend more time vetting. But if you remember, I spoke earlier about the military member that introduced me to this whole process. Well, he already knew this management company. and they were kind of like friends, and they were already managing his properties, and he was getting ready to move away, same time as me. And it was like it's a husband and wife couple, and I'd met them, and they seemed very nice. They owned a lot of real estate themselves, several hundred houses in the area, and I think that because I had that 10 months of working closely with them on small issues, like, hey, I'm trying to find the cheapest place to buy blinds, like, or hey, should I buy like a new fridge or a used one? And they'd kind of give me my options. And problems came up with the property while I was there, the management company would call me and they'd talk to me in detail about different options, like, kind of like, well, you could do this to fix it, but that would cost more. You could do this and it'd be cheaper, but like, here are the risks with doing it, with doing it cheaper. I realized very quickly that they were very concerned about saving me money, and that they were very in the weeds about small amounts of money, which surprised me. And I just got the sense that these were really, really good people that I could trust. And I worked closely with them over that 10 months. And so I realized, kind of like, I guess, my intuition, right, about my partner that I flipped houses with, I don't think these people are going to rip me off. I think that we will benefit from working together. So I'm going to put some trust in them, and I'm going to use them while I'm overseas.
I love that. Well, so you got a good recommendation from somebody that you learned from, that was giving, that was trusting. You spent a good amount of time with them, so you built that trust, and then you felt confident that these could be your partners. That makes a ton of sense. I want to ask a little bit. So you've got 20 houses now.
Yeah.
What kind of income are you bringing in from those properties?
I think if we want to try to make it simple for everybody, let's just say that on average, I paid $40,000 per property, right? And then I would say on average it rents out for $900 a month now. And then I would consider that about half of that, $450, is what I keep as profit, as just pure income, and the rest all gets eaten up by expenses. So 450 times 20, I think, would be, this varies a lot. Every month is different. I have really fat months and I have lean months, where I do huge rehab on a house or something. But on average, that's how it works. Another thing I want to clarify.
$9,000 a month, something like that.
Yep, about $9,000 a month.
And that's a typical rule. You said that 50%. That's a rule in real estate, right? 50%.
It is.
Can you talk about the 50% rule so people can understand that? I don't even know if that's what it's called.
It is. The 50% rule, I think, is very important because I think a lot of times, and the reason I think this is important is because a lot of times when people buy a house in the military, or even if you just have, you're not in the military and you just are somebody that had to relocate for your job, people will buy houses, then they'll move away, they'll go somewhere else, and they'll rent their house out. And then they'll tell people, like, don't worry, I'm making money on this house. I'm actually making $100 a month. Right. And they're saying that because their rent is $100 more than their mortgage. But that is not true. You are not making $100 a month if your rent is $100 more than your mortgage. And the 50% rule is a way of illustrating that. If you're renting if you're renting a property out and it is bringing in $1,000 a month, all the expenses that go into taking care of that property will eat up approximately half, 50% of your rent. And people don't realize that. And you have to consider that even when you pull out the people that have mortgages, and then on top of that still want to make an income, you've got to take that mortgage out and that 50% out, and then see how much of an income you're actually making. And that's actually very hard to do. I think
these are things
a lot
like
of
repairs. These are things like taxes and insurance. Even if you don't have a mortgage, you still got to pay the tax and insurance. Things like that, right?
HOA.
Yep.
I think a lot of times you need to put money away. It's called capital expenditures. But like in the future, you need to replace all the windows, or you need to replace the roof, or you need to replace the entire AC and heater system. These are things that cost tens of thousands of dollars when they pop up. You kind of have to account for that as you go. or else, you're going to find yourself way, way, way behind when one of these expenses hits you. And you can be very unlucky. You can buy a house, have it for a year, and then end up repairing the roof, right, for like $10,000. And maybe the next year you end up replacing the AC system for $8,000. So it isn't an easy business, and you've got to think about these expenses. And of course, we'll probably get to talking about why buy in cash. You can make a lot of money using mortgages to buy real estate, and actually you can make more money using mortgages to buy real estate. But there's a lot more risk when you have things like this pop up. And if you have 20 properties and they're all mortgaged and you barely squeeze out any extra money out of all of them, when one or two have a problem, that can really spiral out of control for you.
Absolutely. So with this, I mean, awesome. Kudos, by the way, $9,000 a month on top of the money you're making probably from the military as well. You're still working, right?
Yeah, I'm still working. Yeah.
That's incredible. That's incredible. It's giving you and your family so much financial freedom that's really inspiring. Thank you for sharing that and being open with us.
Sure.
Do you also invest in the stock market as well? Or are you sole under real estate?
Yeah. So first of all, I think one thing I wanted to point out to everybody, obviously I paid cash for all these houses, and people are just kind of like, where did he get the cash? Like, is he a drug lord or something? Or is he a trust fund baby? My wife didn't work, and I'm an officer in the military. So my salary is, I would say, decent. I like the military, and the salary's decent, but by no means is it, an engineer or a doctor's salary. But I always saved, invested, lived frugally, and I maxed out my IRAs ever since 1999 for me and my wife. We have something like a 401k. It's called a TSP in the military. I've been maxing that out for a long time. Right now, I think the max for that is $19,000 a year, and I'm maxing that out. And those are all in mutual funds. And until I started buying houses in 2013, I was putting all the extra money I had just under the S&P 500 index fund in a normal brokerage account. So very just kind of basic index fund investing was my strategy. I'm certainly not a, Motley Fool. Let's pick, Jim Cramer. Let's pick the right stocks and, let's day trade. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I believe in the tried and true investing. But I did fall in love with real estate. I did pretty much liquidate all of my stocks and mutual funds outside of retirement accounts and use that to pay cash for houses, which is an unusual thing to do, I will admit.
Yeah. So, but a part of you, let's get to that a little bit. A part of you saving all that money came from flipping these homes, living frugally, and then a part of what we hadn't talked about is eliminating your debt, your consumer debt as well. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So talk about how you live frugally, because I think you're maybe a part of this 50% world that we've heard about as well. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think that for me, this was probably early on in my marriage. This was more my wife than me. When my wife met me and we weren't engaged yet, she asked me how much student debt I had, and I got very upset. And I'm like, well, that's like none of your business. And then she says, no, tell me, and I said, I don't know. And she goes, well, you better get on the phone and figure it out. So I had $32,000 in student debt. I was like, oh, that was like more than I expected. I just thought I was, borrowing money here and there. And she actually started crying when I told her that. And by the way, we're not even engaged yet at this point. So we get engaged a little bit later, and she tells me, like, we got to knock this out right now. Like, we got to get rid. And I'm like, well, we could just take our time and pay it off. And she's like, no. We paid off. She took a second and a third job, and I took extra work. I actually worked at Fidelity Investments as a stockbroker while I was in college. We paid off my student debt in a year and a half.
Wow.
So, and then when I bought that first mortgage, my wife told me that she wanted to pay it off quickly, and I'm like, well, that's a dumb idea. Why would you pay off a mortgage quickly? And then I read the Dave Ramsey book, Total Money Makeover, and I was like, I'm doing awesome. Like, I've done all these baby steps already. And I'm like, wait, what is this one? It says pay your mortgage off. says, and I'm like, well, I haven't done that yet, but that seems like a great idea. And so I told my wife, like, I've got this great idea. We're going to pay our mortgage off. And she's like, yeah, like, that's what I said a long time ago. So, but anyway, we once I got on board, we knocked that mortgage out in about 7.5 years. While I was in Japan, we paid that off. Of course, that frees up, now that it's a rental property, that money is just going into, that money's just going into mutual funds, and it was growing at the time. And that was money that I was able to use to flip houses and able to use to pay cash for properties later.
That's incredible. I'm glad we went through this, because when you hear, hey, this guy's got 20 rentals and they're free and clear, he must be independently wealthy. This happens over a long period of time. It's a lifestyle change, everybody. I mean,
right.
These are the small things, and I'm so glad to hear your perspective of your wife, because this is a combined effort when it happens at home. So that's very cool. Thank you for sharing that. And we're talking about how people can save up for their first rental property. If they really inspired here and say, hey, I would like to do that with cash. Everybody has different starting points, but if somebody were to buy, hey, let's call it the $40,000 house in Montgomery, Alabama, and they're just getting started now, what are some of the things that they could do to get ready to buy their first home in cash?
You interviewed Scott, right? Scott Rickens.
Yes, I did.
Recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
He kind of went through this change in his life where he left San Diego, right? And living in an expensive home with high rents and a high cost of living area, and kind of moving somewhere else where he could live more frugally and life could be more meaningful. I think that's part of it. I mean, obviously, if you're planning on paying cash for a house in Silicon Valley, and you don't have any money right now, it's going to take you a little bit of time to save that money up. You have to, what I'm saying is there is a lifestyle change involved. If the reason you don't have any money is that you're in debt and that you have a nice car and that you have a Harley and that you have a jet ski and that you're always getting the new iPhone every year, then there's going to be some things that you change in your life, and I think changing how much your car costs, changing how much it costs where you live, changing what you spend on travel. These are some of the biggest costs that you got to think about first. Trim those way back and start putting that money away, and just start putting it away. And if you've got debt, you've got to pay it off. And I think everybody here saw how I did it. I don't think anybody here now hearing the story thinks that this isn't a story where I, was heavily in debt and then a year later I own 20 properties free and clear. That doesn't happen in real life. And if it does happen in real life, those people go on to sell some sort of a course, and that course is usually BS. There isn't I guess my point is there isn't an easy answer. The answer is get rid of your debt, trim your obligations. You need to find ways to make more money. I flipped houses. My wife took extra jobs so that we could pay off my debt, and find a way to save a lot more money and just make it happen.
It's good to hear that, because it's a lot of the things that we know, right? It's just like diet and exercise, where it's like, how do I lose weight? Diet and exercise, right? Or eating less sugar, things like that. I've read your post about your recent diet that you're working on.
Oh, thank you.
So,
yeah. Somebody read that. Good.
Yeah. But I mean, it's the same thing, right? A lot of these things we hear, it's like, okay, how do I save more money? Spend less, and or just move it towards things that you care about more, so that you can move towards a life that inspires you. And if this story inspires you, then this is a great opportunity to do that. Okay, let's say somebody has saved a little bit of money and they're ready to buy their first property. How do they find a good deal? I mean, we don't have to go into all the details, but what are the things that you're looking for when you're looking for a property?
Well, first, I want to caveat what you said about cash first, and then move into this question. So about buying a house in cash, I think it's kind of cool. I think it's great peace of mind that I own all my properties, free and clear. But I think it's totally irresponsible to put 20% down to buy a property, and for yourself or as an investment, And as long as you kind of wait until that property's stabilized, you can see that it's making money. You can see that you've got good management in place. You've had everything in place for a while and it looks good. And then you had like another 20% and you were ready to buy a second property. I think that's smart. So I think that being debt free is pretty cool. I think it's great for me being close to retirement, but not everybody has to run out and pay cash for a house. So on to the next question, finding a deal. If you want to get started, first of all, I've always used real estate agents. And just like I spent a lot of time finding the right property manager, you want to find a way to find the best real estate agent. It is worth doing. The real estate agents that are making the most money, to be quite honest, the real estate agents that, they've won awards for doing the most volume. They have a great reputation. You ask around, you check online, you use all the online tools that you can, get referrals from different places, but you want a very good agent to help you find a house. And it's worth the money if they're a good agent. The other thing I'll say about agents too, and this is true in everything that I've done in real estate, is once you start working with an agent, if they are not doing everything you want them to do and being like awesome about it, you need to tell them. And then if they're not fixing it, you need to fire them. And I mean, they're not really getting a salary from you, but you need to say, look, I'm going to use somebody else. Like, I'm sorry. You just got to, I know it's hard for some people to do, but you're going to pay them a fortune when you buy that house, right? 6% or, 3% to them and 3% to the other agent. Make sure that you are getting exactly what you expect, a high level of support and a high level of, getting questions answered, getting emails answered, and responsiveness. But I would say use an agent. That's a big part of it. Now, if you're talking about investing in real estate, then there's a lot more to learn. There's the 1% rule. You're going to want to read up on real estate. I like to always say, I won't buy a property, even to live in, unless I know that property will make a good rental when I move away.
That's a good point. That's a good bar for buying any piece of real estate. That makes a lot of sense.
Is.
So
yeah.
you said close to retirement. And I'm looking at you on this video right now. You look like a pretty young man. So what do you mean close to retirement? What, you got 20 houses now and you're in the military. I understand that. What are your plans for the next 5 to 10 years? It sounds like retirement's in there.
Yeah, so when you're in the US military, the earliest you can retire with a normal retirement is at the 20-year point. Now, of course, most people don't really call that a retirement. I mean, there are some people that retire from the military at 37 or 38 years old. And then you get this pension, and it's a decent pension, but with most people's obligations, they can't retire on that. So they go back to work the next day. But of course, in my case, because of the way that I've saved and invested in and what I've done in real estate, for me, it truly is a retirement. I mean, I'm already financially independent without my military paycheck right now. And my military paycheck is just a big bonus that I have every month. Or you could think of it that way, or you could think of the houses as being a bonus. But I only need one of those incomes. And when I retire, that military paycheck gets cut in about half. But I get that for the rest of my life with cost of living increases. But I am retiring on August 1st of 2020. That'll be the 20-year point for me. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That is awesome. And how old will you be on August in 2020?
I'll be 46 years old.
That is incredible. Retiring at 46 years old and with quite a bit of, income to support yourself. So you said people jump into another gig or another career. What's going to inspire you for the next 40 years of your life?
I've always been, I had this like little blog that I'm been working on, and I write articles, and I'm trying to, do some videos and do stuff that'll help military members figure things out in the way that I have. Maybe something that would propel them and even help them do things faster than I did if they had this idea that maybe they would want to retire for real at the 20-year point or become financially independent, maybe even before they retire. But with as busy as my career has been, I just haven't spent the time on that blog that I wanted to. And to be quite honest, the real estate that I did not take a lot of time. Once I left, I did it all by Skype, like we're doing right now, and email and DocuSign, and it was all very, very easy. But there's a lot of other things in real estate that I want to do. I do want to use loans in the future. I do want to purchase multifamily. It's not so much that I want to make a lot more money. It's just that I want to further my real estate education. I want to, move up to different steps and try different things. I want to try Airbnb. Everybody's doing stuff with Airbnb these days. I want to do something with Airbnb. So I'm assuming that the blog and continuing to educate people and investing in real estate will take up all my time.
And it's also things that you're really passionate about. We talked at the top of the show. You're really into real estate investing, and you're really into giving back to a community that's given you so much as well. So talking about the community, was there a book or a blog or a podcast or anything that really inspired you along the way to keep investing in real estate?
Well, there absolutely was. I mean, I didn't know that blogs existed. I didn't know that there was a community like this. I know I saw you at FinCon a few weeks ago. I didn't know that things like FinCon existed, or that like-minded people got together and talked about financial independence and money and how to live a great life. I was goofing around on the internet. I can't remember when exactly. I mean, about 3 or 4 years ago, typing in different search terms. And I think I was trying to look up something on stocks, and I ran across Jim Collins' blog, JL Collins NH. He has a stock series. He has a book now called The Simple Path to Wealth. But he has, I think of him as the godfather of FI. I loved his blog. He talked about his approach to money, his approach to life, and I'm like, who is this guy? And is there anything else like this out there? Absolutely loved it. Did a quick search, and I found Paula Pant in Afford Anything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she is so cool. Like, I love her message. These are the people that inspired me. I'm also proud to say that I'm friends with these people now. So I feel like I've come a long way. But they truly inspired me to dive into this community. And also, I think I realized the second I saw these blogs, I was kind of like, but shouldn't I just do this? Like, shouldn't I talk about what I'm doing with real estate and just like have a blog and let people read it? And so that's exactly what I did as well.
That's incredible. I am a big fan of Simple Path to Wealth and Jim Collins, and I'm happy to call Paula a friend as well because of this community. And I love what she's doing. She's got an incredible podcast as well as a great blog. So everybody check out those resources to get inspired as well. Another great resource we want to talk about, though, is you. Where can people find you, learn a little bit more, dive into some of your material?
Yeah, just go to my blog. It's called Rich on Money. So it's richonmoney.com, and read up. I mean, I have there's like a real estate tab, and you can kind of read my real estate stuff, and then there's like an investing tab, and you can kind of read my investing stuff. It really started off as a pure real estate blog, but I found so many people that were sort of like still financially in a mess, but wanted to invest in real estate, and so I really found that it was important to talk a lot about, well, this is how you get yourself to a financial position of strength so you can invest in real estate, which again, I think is a different message than you'll get from like Bigger Pockets podcast or several other gurus. I think a lot of times some people try to give that message of you could use real estate to get yourself out of a financial mess. And I wouldn't really go there. I think I would use traditional methods to sort of fix your debt problem and to fix your financial problems, and to sort of make sure that you have retirement accounts, and you don't raid those retirement accounts to try to do some crazy real estate venture that you're not ready for yet. But to do things in a safe and conservative and thoughtful way. And I think of real estate investing as a more advanced investing technique than just investing in mutual funds.
I like that. Prepare yourself financially for the bigger investment of real estate so that you can be successful. So, Rich, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being on the show today, and thanks for educating us on your awesome story. Appreciate it.
Oh, Andy, thanks so much. This was awesome.